It's one of the most famous moments in history. But who were the people making that history? Who was the first person on the moon? As the mission commander, Neil Armstrong was the first to exit the lunar module and the first to step on the moon. His words, as he did so, were broadcast around the world and are some of the most famous in history. Who was the second person on the moon? 19 minutes later, Edwin "Buzz" Aldrin joined Armstrong and became the second man to set foot on the moon. Michael Collins stayed on board the command module Columbia in lunar orbit. Where did Apollo 11 land? They assessed where would be best using high-resolution photos of the lunar surface. However, upon descending towards the lunar surface, the lunar module Eagle landed west of their planned target point. The Eagle was moving too fast. The Eagle has landed. It took NASA 2 years' worth of studies to come up with 5 possible landing points on the moon. We got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. If they had been forced to fly for any longer, they likely would have run out of fuel. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Eagle eventually landed on a region of the moon called the Mare Tranquillitatis, known as the Sea of Tranquility. When Eagle landed, Armstrong radioed, "Houston, Tranquility Base here." The response from Mission Control came with a slight misspeak due to relief that everything had gone smoothly. "Roger, Twan, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground." What time did Apollo 11 land on the moon? Eagle landed at 8:17 p.m. on the 20th of July 1969, with around 25 seconds of fuel left. The hatch was open at 11:43 p.m. At 2:51 a.m. on the 21st of July, Armstrong began his descent to the surface and made history. It was known as Columbia. The 3 astronauts on Apollo 11. The Apollo 11 crew consisted of 3 men. Neil Armstrong, mission commander. None of them went into space again following Apollo 11. Edwin "Buzz" Aldrin, lunar module pilot. Michael Collins, command module pilot. There were 3 parts to the spacecraft. The items they declared included moon dust and moon rocks. The command module, which was the part that would return to Earth, and was where the 3 astronauts spent most of their time. The lunar module, which was the part that would actually land on the moon. This was known as Eagle. He even claimed that he did say, but that it was inaudible. The service module, which supported the command module, supplying things like oxygen and water. All 3 astronauts had previously completed NASA space missions as part of the Gemini space program. Apollo 11 facts. The Apollo 11 crew had to go through customs. He did so privately because of a lawsuit against NASA about the broadcasting of religious activities from the moon. As an alternative, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins signed hundreds of photographs so that Armstrong's family could sell them in a worst-case scenario. After landing back on Earth, the Apollo 11 crew had to go through customs, as though they were returning from another country rather than from space. Neil Armstrong got the quote wrong. Neil Armstrong had reportedly planned to say, "One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." He claimed for a journey from Houston, Texas to the moon and back. But of years' worth of technical and scientific planning and design, the crew were put into quarantine. The lunar dust was described as powdery, and it stuck to the spacesuits of Aldrin and Armstrong. The hard surface of the moon and the thin layer of dust meant that the pole was not planted very firmly in the ground. When the lunar module took off from the surface, the exhaust engine caused the flag to topple over. The pair also tested moving around on the surface, experimenting with kangaroo hops and loping to get around. This was in case they brought back any disease or germs from the moon. Buzz Aldrin drank wine on the moon. Of these, only 180 are accounted for. Nixon described it as the most historic phone call ever made. The lunar module pilot took communion on the moon. The rocket was Saturn V, which had launched 13 times from the Kennedy Space Center over 6 years. The crew were well prepared. Once in lunar orbit, Armstrong and Aldrin moved into the Eagle, ready to descend to the surface. Neil Armstrong couldn't afford to take out life insurance in case anything went wrong on the mission. They had to fill in their expenses. Buzz Aldrin claimed back $33.31 in expenses upon returning to Earth. Lots of the moon rocks are lost. Richard Nixon gifted 270 of the moon rocks brought back from Apollo 11 to the nations of the world. Kennedy saw the moon landing happen in a way. As the landing happened, the words that Kennedy had spoken at the beginning of the decade flashed on a screen at the Kennedy Space Center. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. Apollo 11 moon landing. The landing of Apollo 11 was not only the culmination of the space race. The Apollo 9 and 10 missions also took place in 1969 and were integral to the success of the moon landing. Whilst on the lunar surface, Armstrong and Aldrin collected moon dust and rocks to be brought back to Earth. They ensured that the world knew that it was the U.S. who had reached the moon first by planting an American flag. The astronauts also received a phone call from President Richard Nixon whilst on the lunar surface. Apollo 11 launch. The Apollo 11 mission launched on July 16, 1969, at 13:32. Once they had launched, they traveled for 3 days before reaching lunar orbit. When Eagle separated from Columbia to begin its descent, Armstrong reportedly said, "The Eagle has wings." Don't forget to support Earth Science TV with a like and let us know your thoughts about the video. Thank you.